Commander Vex stood on the bridge of the starship Inevitable Conquest with the kind of confidence that only comes from never having been truly challenged. His three eyes gleamed as he studied the blue-green planet spinning lazily below them. "Gentlemen," he announced to his crew, puffing out his chest plates. "Behold our next conquest. Third planet from a yellow star, primitive technology, no interstellar travel. This should be easier than raiding a nursery." Scout Pip, a nervous creature whose antenna twitched whenever he was stressed, which was always, pulled up the preliminary scans on his console. "Sir, the electromagnetic signatures suggest they do have some form of digital communication network. Maybe we should observe them a bit longer before we—" "Nonsense," Vex waved a dismissive tentacle. "Look at their pathetic metal contraptions barely scratching the edge of their atmosphere. What could possibly go wrong?" Analyst Grunk, whose monotone voice could put a caffeinated insomniac to sleep, cleared his throat apparatus. "Protocol dictates we should intercept their communications to assess military capabilities before proceeding with invasion procedures." Fine," Vex sighed dramatically. "Pip, scan their channels. Let's see what passes for military intelligence on this backwater rock." Pip's claws danced across his console, intercepting various Earth transmissions. Sports broadcasts flickered past, news programs, cooking shows, and then something that made all three aliens lean forward. "Wait," Pip said, his voice climbing an octave. "I think I found something. This appears to be a military briefing about their apex predators." The main screen filled with footage of a sleek, four-legged creature stalking through tall grass. The narrator's voice was calm and professional. "The domestic cat is one of nature's most efficient hunters, capable of detecting movement from incredible distances and striking with lightning speed." Grunk's note-taker appendage began scratching furiously. "Fascinating. They call them cats. Notice the documentary specifically mentions efficiency and striking capability." On screen, a cat pounced on a toy mouse with fluid precision. The narrator continued, "Their retractable claws and powerful jaw muscles make them formidable opponents for prey many times their size." Vex's confident smirk began to falter. "Retractable weapons? Disproportionate combat capability? This is concerning." "Sir," Pip squeaked. "Maybe this is just—" "Quiet," Vex snapped, watching as the documentary showed a cat's eyes reflecting light in the darkness. "Look at those optical enhancements. They've clearly been bred for night operations." The footage shifted to a cat bringing a dead bird to its owner's doorstep. "Cats often present their kills as gifts," the narrator explained, "demonstrating their hunting prowess to their human companions." Grunk looked up from his notes. "They present evidence of successful terminations to their handlers. This suggests a formal reporting structure." "And look," Vex pointed at the screen, where a human was scratching behind a purring cat's ears. "The humans show clear deference to these creatures. They're maintaining pack loyalty through grooming rituals." Pip's antennae were now twitching so fast they were practically vibrating. "Commander, I really think we might be misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Vex's voice rose. "Pip, we're looking at a species that has weaponized their planet's apex predators and integrated them into their social structure. These aren't pets, they're biological warfare units." The documentary showed a montage of cats performing typical cat behaviors, leaping incredible heights, squeezing through impossibly small spaces, sitting motionlessly for hours watching bird feeders. Grunk nodded slowly. "Vertical assault capabilities, infiltration skills, and patience for extended surveillance operations. The tactical applications are impressive." "Sir," Pip tried again, his voice cracking, "what if they're just—" "Just what, Pip? Just the most sophisticated biological weapons program we've ever encountered?" Vex began pacing, his agitation growing. "These humans have taken their planet's most efficient killers and somehow convinced them to work as partners. Do you understand the implications?" On the screen, a cat was now demonstrating the classic "if I fits, I sits" phenomenon, cramming itself into a cardboard box barely large enough to contain it. "Adaptive camouflage training," Grunk observed. "Remarkable flexibility protocols." Vex stopped pacing and stared at the screen with something approaching respect. "We need to observe these cats in their natural habitat. If we're going to invade this planet, we need to understand exactly what we're up against." "But sir," Pip protested weakly, "invasion protocol suggests we should study their actual military first, not their—" "Their biological weapons program is their military, you fool!" Vex's three eyes blazed with the fervor of someone who had completely misunderstood the situation. "Set course for the surface. We're going to watch these creatures in action." As the ship descended toward Earth's atmosphere, none of the three aliens noticed that the military briefing they had been analyzing was actually titled Cat Fancy TV, Understanding Your Feline Friend. Sometimes the most dangerous intelligence failures come not from a lack of information, but from having exactly enough information to reach completely the wrong conclusion. 3 hours later, the inevitable conquest hung in perfect stealth mode above a quiet suburban neighborhood, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it completely invisible to human detection systems. Unfortunately, it was also invisible to Mrs. Henderson's backyard wind chimes, which had been getting tangled in the ship's sensor array for the past 20 minutes. "Status report," Commander Vex demanded, trying to maintain his authoritative demeanor despite the constant jingling sounds coming from outside the hull. "Cloaking systems operational, sir," Pip reported, his voice slightly muffled as he crawled under his console to untangle yet another wind chime. "We've successfully identified a target residence, with confirmed presence of one tactical feline unit." Grunk adjusted his observation equipment and peered down at the small house below. "Subject residence, single-story dwelling, approximately 1,200 square feet, standard defensive perimeter consisting of white picket fence and decorative garden gnomes." "Garden gnomes?" Vex raised an eyebrow ridge. "Possibly early warning sentries," Grunk noted, with characteristic seriousness. "Their strategic placement suggests surveillance capabilities, though their operational effectiveness remains unclear." Through the ship's enhanced viewing systems, they watched as an orange tabby cat emerged from a pet door, stretched luxuriously, and began what could only be described as a patrol of the backyard. "Dude," Vex whispered, as if the cat might somehow hear him through the vacuum of space and several layers of advanced shielding. "Observe the systematic territorial sweep." The cat, whose name was actually Mr. Whiskers but whom the aliens had designated as Target Alpha, walked the perimeter of the yard with a kind of purposeful stride that screamed professional to anyone determined to misinterpret normal cat behavior. "Notice the scent marking protocol," Grunk observed as Mr. Whiskers lifted his leg near a rose bush, clearly establishing territorial boundaries and communication networks for other operatives. Pip, who had finally freed himself from the wind chime situation, peered through his own scanner. "Sir, are we absolutely certain this isn't just normal animal behavior? I mean, most species mark territory to—" "Pip," Vex interrupted, his voice carrying the patience of someone explaining basic tactics to a recruit. "Most species don't coordinate their territorial marking with advanced civilizations capable of spaceflight. This is clearly a sophisticated communication system." Mr. Whiskers had now positioned himself on top of the fence, where he sat with the regal bearing of a king surveying his domain. His tail twitched once, twice, then settled into perfect stillness as he stared intently at a squirrel in the neighbor's bird feeder. "Lock and load position assumed," Grunk reported. "Target has identified potential threat and is maintaining visual contact." "Threat?" Pip's voice cracked. "It's just a squirrel." "Just a squirrel?" Vex turned to stare at his scout with something approaching pity. "Pip, we're looking at an apex predator maintaining perimeter security against potential infiltrators. That squirrel could be gathering intelligence on the human habitation patterns." The squirrel, blissfully unaware that it had been classified as a potential enemy operative, continued stuffing its cheeks with sunflower seeds. "Movement in the western sector," Grunk announced, with the excitement of someone who finds watching paint dry thrilling. "The tactical unit is repositioning." Mr. Whiskers had indeed moved, executing what the aliens interpreted as a tactical flanking maneuver, but which was actually just him getting bored of watching the squirrel and deciding to investigate an interesting smell near the garbage cans. "Beautiful," Vex breathed. "Look at that stealth approach. No wasted movement, perfect sound discipline." "Sir," Pip tried one more time, his antenna practically vibrating with stress. "What if we're overthinking this? What if cats are just, cats?" Vex and Grunk turned to stare at him with the kind of look usually reserved for someone who had just suggested that water might be wet. "Pip," Vex said slowly, "are you seriously suggesting that a species capable of interstellar warfare would waste time and resources on non-functional biological companions?" "Well, the humans clearly value these creatures highly enough to integrate them into their living spaces," Grunk added. "The resource allocation alone suggests military importance." Mr. Whiskers had now discovered something fascinating in the garbage can, his entire head disappearing as he investigated what appeared to be leftover tuna casserole. "Intelligence gathering," Vex nodded approvingly, "probably analyzing enemy dietary patterns and waste disposal methods." Pip slumped in his chair, recognizing defeat when he saw it. "Of course, sir, intelligence gathering." As the day wore on, the three aliens documented every aspect of Mr. Whisker's routine with the dedication of scholars studying ancient texts. His mid-morning nap was classified as maintaining operational readiness through strategic rest periods. His lengthy grooming session became weapons maintenance and stealth coding application. When the mailman arrived and Mr. Whiskers puffed up to twice his normal size while hissing from behind the safety of the front window, all three aliens nearly jumped out of their exoskeletons. "Intimidation display activated," Vex shouted. "Look at the psychological warfare tactics. Volume amplification, visual size enhancement, and aggressive posturing," Grunk rattled off, his note-taken appendage smoking from overuse. "The mailman is clearly retreating." The mailman, who had dealt with Mr. Whisker's daily theatrics for 3 years, simply chuckled and continued delivering mail, completely unfazed by the furry drama queen in the window. "He's not intimidated," Pip observed weakly. "Of course not," Vex replied with the confidence of someone who had clearly thought this through. "The mailman is obviously part of the intelligence network. Notice how he continues his route despite the warning? That's the behavior of a trained operative." As the sun began to set, the three aliens settled in for what they assumed would be a long night of tactical observations. None of them had any idea that tomorrow would bring an entirely new level of misunderstanding when the humans introduced something far more terrifying than any apex predator. A baby. The next morning brought what Commander Vex would later describe in his official report as the most significant escalation in Earth's defensive capabilities since the invention of pointy sticks. It started innocuously enough. The three aliens had spent the night taking shifts, documenting Mr. Whisker's nocturnal patrol patterns, which mostly consisted of staring intensely at absolutely nothing for hours at a time, before suddenly sprinting across the house at 3 a.m. for reasons known only to cats and possibly ancient gods. "Fascinating sleep deprivation psychological warfare," Grunk had noted during the 2 a.m. shift. The irregular movement patterns would drive any infiltrator to madness. But now, as the morning sun cast long shadows across the suburban landscape, something was happening at the target residence. A vehicle had arrived, and 2 humans were emerging with what appeared to be some sort of tactical carrying case. "Movement in the primary structure," Vex announced, snapping to attention. 2 adult humans, designation, he squinted at his scanner. "Mike and Jenny, approaching the residence with unknown cargo." Pip adjusted his viewing apparatus. "Sir, that appears to be a standard civilian transport vehicle. I'm reading no weapon signatures, no armor plating, no—" "That's exactly what they want us to think," Vex interrupted. "Classic misdirection." "Grunk, analysis of the cargo container." Grunk's multiple eye stalks focused on the infant car seat that Mike was carefully extracting from the back seat. "Dimensions suggest a compact, high-value payload. Notice the careful handling protocols and protective housing. Whatever's inside must be extremely important." The aliens watched with growing fascination as the humans approached their front door, Mike fumbling with keys while Jenny cooed at the car seat. Mr. Whiskers appeared at the window, his ears perked forward with obvious curiosity. "The tactical unit is responding to the arrival," Vex observed. "Look at that alert posture. It clearly recognizes the significance of this delivery." Jenny carried the car seat inside, and through their enhanced surveillance equipment, the aliens could see her gently lifting out what appeared to be a tiny human wrapped in a soft blanket. "Great cosmic void," Grunk breathed, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "It's a miniature human." "A what now?" Pip squeaked. "Don't you see?" Vex was practically bouncing with excitement. "They're breeding them smaller. Compact human units for specialized operations. Look at the size efficiency." Baby Emma, blissfully unaware that she had just been classified as a military asset, yawned and made a small gurgling sound that the aliens' translation software helpfully rendered as aggressive vocalization detected. "The acoustic capabilities are already developed," Grunk noted, scribbling frantically. "And notice how the adult humans are responding with immediate resource allocation." Jenny was indeed responding, but mostly with the kind of exhausted care that new mothers have perfected since the dawn of time. She settled into the nursery rocker, gently bouncing Emma while humming a lullaby. "Resource provisioning and comfort protocols," Vex interpreted. "They're clearly maintaining peak operational efficiency for their specialized unit." But it was Mr. Whisker's reaction that really sent the aliens into a frenzy. The cat had followed the family into the nursery and was now positioning himself near the doorway, his tail twitching with what the aliens interpreted as tactical readiness, but which was actually just typical cat curiosity about the new squeaky thing. "By the 7 moons of Xerxes," Vex gasped. The biological weapon has been assigned guard duty. Look at that positioning, Grunk added, his voice filled with academic excitement. Strategic choke point control, clear sight lines to all approach vectors, and maintain proximity to the high-value target. Pip stared at his console readings, his antenna drooping with resignation. Sir, what if the cat just likes the baby? The silence that followed was so profound that it seemed to suck the sound out of the surrounding space. Vex and Grunk turned to stare at Pip with the kind of expression usually reserved for someone who had just suggested that gravity might be optional. Likes the baby, Vex repeated slowly. Likes the baby, Grunk echoed. Sir, I mean, lots of animals are naturally protective of young offspring, even from other species. It's called pack bonding, and it's pretty common in social creatures. Maybe the cat isn't a weapon at all. Maybe it's just... Pip? Vex interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had clearly thought this through much more thoroughly than anyone else. Are you seriously suggesting that an advanced civilization would develop emotional attachments to their biological weapons? Well, when you put it like that... Because that, Vex continued, warming to his theme, would be the most terrifyingly effective military strategy in the known galaxy. Grunk's note-taker appendage paused mid-scratch. Emotional integration protocols. The psychological warfare applications are staggering. Think about it, Vex began pacing again, a habit that was becoming increasingly frequent. They don't just deploy these creatures as weapons. They make them family. They create genuine emotional bonds. The tactical advantages are unprecedented. On the screen below, Mr. Whiskers had settled into a comfortable loaf position near the nursery door, purring contentedly as he kept one eye on the hallway and one eye on baby Emma, who was now fast asleep in her crib. Perfect, Vex whispered. Look at that dual-focus surveillance pattern, simultaneous threat assessment and asset protection, and the emotional programming ensures maximum commitment to the mission. The loyalty factor would eliminate any possibility of defection, Grunk added. A weapon that genuinely cares about its assignment is a weapon that will never abandon its post. Pip slumped further in his chair. So you're telling me that because they love each other, they're more dangerous? Exactly, Vex clapped his tentacles together. Pip, you've finally grasped the core concept. Earth hasn't just weaponized their apex predators. They've created emotional bonds that make those weapons absolutely incorruptible. Jenny emerged from the nursery, having successfully gotten Emma down for her morning nap. She paused to scratch Mr. Whiskers behind the ears, and the cat's purring became audible even through the alien's surveillance equipment. Positive reinforcement protocols, Grunk observed. Maintaining operational morale through strategic reward systems. Sir, Pip said weakly, what if we're completely wrong about all of this? Vex turned to face his scout with the kind of patience usually reserved for very small children and very drunk philosophers. Pip, we are observing a species that has achieved perfect military integration between multiple biological systems through emotional programming. They have created weapons that love their work, guards that genuinely care about their assignments, and soldiers that view their duties as family obligations. He gestured toward the screen, where Mr. Whiskers continued his vigilant watch over the sleeping baby. If we're wrong about this, then we're looking at something far more dangerous than any military force we've ever encountered. We're looking at a species that has accidentally created the most effective defense system in the galaxy, simply by being nice to their pets. The three aliens stared down at the peaceful domestic scene below, each lost in their own thoughts about the implications of what they were witnessing. None of them noticed that Emma had woken up and was now making the soft, happy gurgling sounds that babies make when they're content and safe. Sounds that their translation software was helpfully categorizing as satisfaction with current tactical deployment. Sometimes the most dangerous misunderstandings are the ones that make perfect sense. It was 2:17 a.m. when everything went sideways. The aliens had been maintaining their vigil for 3 days now, documenting what they believed to be the most sophisticated military partnership in galactic history. They had filled 17 data storage units with detailed analyses of Mr. Whiskers' patrol patterns, feeding schedules, and what Grunk had classified as advanced tactical napping techniques. Commander Vex was on watch duty, sipping something that resembled coffee but tasted like regret, when the first disturbance registered on their sensors. Contact, he whispered, snapping to full alert. Multiple signatures approaching the perimeter. Pip jerked awake from his console, antenna immediately standing at attention. What kind of signatures, sir? Unknown hostiles, moving in coordinated formation, Vex replied, his three eyes locked on the tactical display. Small, fast, and approaching from the eastern garbage disposal area. What they were actually observing was a family of raccoons who had discovered that Mike and Jenny's garbage cans contained the remnants of what had been a particularly excellent lasagna dinner. The raccoons, being raccoons, had decided that 2 a.m. was the perfect time for a little dumpster diving. "Wake Grunk," Vex ordered. "This could be it. The field test we've been waiting for." Grunk materialized at his station with the efficiency of someone who had been trained to sleep with one eye stalk open. "Status report. Incoming assault force. Designation..." Vex squinted at his screen. "Designation, Trash Pandas. Approaching the residential target." "Trash Pandas?" Pip's voice cracked. "Obviously a code name," Vex replied with the confidence of someone who had never met a raccoon. "Probably refers to their camouflage patterns and scavenging tactics." Below, in the house, Mr. Whiskers was fast asleep on his favorite cushion near the nursery door when his ears twitched. Something had disturbed the natural order of his domain, and in the ancient tradition of cats everywhere, he was not having it. The raccoons had successfully breached the garbage can perimeter and were now engaged in what could charitably be described as a heated negotiation over the last of the garlic bread. Their chittering and the sound of aluminum cans clattering had finally reached Mr. Whiskers' highly tuned auditory sensors. "The tactical unit is responding," Grunk observed as Mr. Whiskers stretched, yawned, and padded over to the living room window. "Notice the immediate transition from rest state to operational readiness." Mr. Whiskers peered out through the blinds and saw exactly what he had expected to see. Unauthorized personnel conducting unauthorized activities in his yard. His tail began to twitch with the kind of purposeful irritation that had been perfected by millions of years of feline evolution. "Threat assessment phase initiated," Vex narrated, completely absorbed in what he was witnessing. "Look at that reconnaissance posture." The cat's pupils dilated as he focused on the raccoon family reunion happening around his human garbage cans. This was, by any reasonable cat logic, completely unacceptable. These were his humans, this was his territory, and those were his garbage cans to ignore. "Sir," Pip whispered, "the baby is still sleeping in the nursery." All three aliens turned to look at their displays, where baby Emma was indeed fast asleep, completely unaware of the tactical situation developing in her backyard. "The high-value asset is in the secured zone," Vex confirmed. "Perfect. We're about to witness a full defensive deployment." Mr. Whiskers had reached a decision. He padded quickly through the house, positioning himself at the back door, where he could get the best view of the intruders. His fur began to rise as he assessed the situation with the kind of cold, tactical precision that would have impressed military strategists across the galaxy, if military strategists had been inclined to interpret normal cat behavior as advanced warfare. "Combat transformation initiated," Grunk reported, his voice filled with academic excitement. "Visual intimidation protocols activating." Indeed, Mr. Whiskers had puffed up to approximately twice his normal size, his fur standing on end as he prepared to demonstrate exactly why cats had been humanity's chosen partners in the ancient war against things that didn't belong in their space. The largest raccoon, a portly fellow who had clearly never met a garbage can he didn't like, knocked over an entire container of recyclables in his enthusiasm for leftover Italian food. The crash echoed through the quiet neighborhood like a dinner bell for every dog within a 3-block radius. Mr. Whiskers had heard enough. He positioned himself at the sliding glass door, took a deep breath, and unleashed what the aliens would later describe in their report as the most terrifying psychological warfare display in recorded history. "Morrow, move away!" The sound that emerged from Mr. Whiskers was the kind of noise that suggested imminent doom, personal vengeance, and possibly the end of all good things in the universe. It was a sound that reached deep into the primordial brain and activated every single fight-or-flight response that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. The raccoons froze. "The acoustic assault weapons deployed," Vex shouted, nearly spilling his coffee-like beverage across his control panel. "Look at the immediate immobilization effect on the hostile forces." Mr. Whiskers followed up his opening gambit with a series of strategic hisses and what could only be described as aggressive chittering, his tail now resembling a bottle brush that had been struck by lightning. "Multi-phase sonic attack," Grunk documented frantically. "Sustained psychological pressure designed to break enemy morale." The raccoons, who had been enjoying a perfectly pleasant evening of garbage exploration, suddenly found themselves face to face with what appeared to be a very angry, very puffed-up demon cat staring at them through a glass door with the kind of intensity usually reserved for laser beams. "Tactical withdrawal initiated by the hostile forces," Vex reported, as the raccoons began backing away from the garbage cans. But Mr. Whiskers wasn't finished. He had worked himself up into what cat behaviorists call maximum indignation mode, and what the aliens were interpreting as full combat engagement. He began pacing back and forth along the glass door, his vocalizations increasing in both volume and creative cursing. "Patrol demonstration," Grunk observed, showing the intruders that the entire perimeter is under active surveillance. The largest raccoon, deciding that discretion was indeed the better part of valor when faced with an obviously unhinged house cat, chittered something that probably translated to, "Maybe we should try the Thompsons' house instead," and began retreating toward the fence line. "Enemy commander ordering tactical withdrawal." Vex was practically bouncing with excitement. "Complete operational success through intimidation alone." Mr. Whiskers, seeing that his message was being received, delivered one final definitive mro that roughly translated to, "and don't come back," before settling into a satisfied crouch, his tail still twitching with residual battle readiness. The raccoons, thoroughly convinced that the nice garbage cans were simply not worth dealing with the psychotic fur demon, departed for easier targets elsewhere in the neighborhood. "Perimeter secured," Grunk announced. "The biological weapons system has successfully repelled the invasion force without requiring human intervention. And the high-value asset remained undisturbed throughout the entire engagement," Vex added, checking his display to confirm that baby Emma was still fast asleep. Mr. Whiskers, his duty complete, performed one final patrol of the visible territory, confirmed that the threat had been neutralized, and returned to his post near the nursery door, where he settled back into loaf position with the satisfied air of a job well done. "Gentlemen," Vex said quietly, his voice filled with something approaching awe, "we have just witnessed the most efficient defensive operation in military history. No backup required, no weapons discharged, no collateral damage, just pure psychological warfare, executed with surgical precision." Pip stared down at the peaceful suburban scene, where Mr. Whiskers was now grooming his paw with the casual indifference of someone who had just successfully defended his territory against overwhelming odds. "Sir," Pip said slowly, "I'm starting to think we might be in serious trouble here." For once, Commander Vex couldn't argue with that assessment. The emergency staff meeting aboard the inevitable Conquest convened at 3:47 hours, which was either very late at night or very early in the morning, depending on your perspective and your relationship with caffeine. Commander Vex stood at the head of the conference table, his three eyes bloodshot from too many hours of surveillance and too much of whatever passed for coffee in their part of the galaxy. Grunk had arranged his 17 data tablets in perfect order, while Pip sat hunched over his console, his antenna drooping with what could charitably be called existential dread. "Gentlemen," Vex began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had recently discovered that everything he thought he knew about warfare was wrong, "we need to discuss our operational assessment of Earth's defensive capabilities." "Sir," Grunk said, consulting his notes, "after 72 hours of intensive observation, I believe we have severely underestimated the strategic complexity of this civilization." "Underestimated?" Pip's voice cracked. "Sir, we've been watching a cat protect a baby for 3 days, and somehow convinced ourselves it's the most advanced military operation in the galaxy." Vex turned to stare at his scout with the kind of look that suggested Pip had just stumbled onto something far more terrifying than he realized. "Pip," Vex said slowly, "what you just described is exactly the problem." "I don't follow, sir." "Think about it," Vex began, pacing again, a habit that was becoming more frequent and more frantic. "We intercepted their communications. We analyzed their tactical deployments. We observed their operational protocols. And what did we discover?" Grunk cleared his throat apparatus. "That they have successfully integrated apex predators into their civilian population through emotional bonding protocols." "But it's more than that," Vex continued, warming to his theme. "Grunk, show him the research you compiled on human pack bonding behavior." Grunk's eye stalk swiveled to focus on a new data tablet. "Ah yes, this is where the situation becomes truly concerning. According to their internet databases, humans have a documented tendency to form emotional attachments with virtually any species they encounter." "Any species?" Pip squeaked. "Any species," Grunk confirmed. "I have documented cases of humans bonding with creatures they classify as dangerous predators, sharks, bears, venomous reptiles. They even have facilities where they keep these creatures specifically for emotional interaction." "Zoos," Vex added helpfully. "But that's not the frightening part," Grunk continued. "The frightening part is that this bonding appears to be mutual. The other species respond positively to human interaction, often modifying their natural behavior patterns to accommodate human preferences." Pip stared at his colleagues. You're telling me that humans can make friends with anything? We're telling you, Vex said, his voice dropping to a whisper, that humans have weaponized friendship itself. The silence that followed was the kind of profound quiet that usually accompanies major philosophical revelations, or really good food poisoning. Sir, Pip said finally, that's impossible. You can't weaponize friendship. Can't you? Vex gestured toward their surveillance display where Mr. Whiskers was visible through the window, maintaining his vigilant watch over the household. We just witnessed a creature that weighs approximately 8 pounds successfully defend a strategic position against multiple opponents through pure intimidation. And why did it do this? Because it cares about the baby? Exactly, Vex's voice rose triumphantly. It didn't do it for food, or territory, or dominance. It did it because it has formed an emotional bond with the humans, and that bond has transformed a simple domestic animal into a willing and effective guardian. Grunk nodded sagely. The tactical implications are staggering. Imagine trying to invade a planet where every creature, from the smallest domestic pet to the largest predator, has been psychologically programmed to view humans as family. But they're not programmed, Pip protested weakly. They just like each other. That's the point, Vex shouted, causing several pieces of equipment to rattle. They've created a defense system, so sophisticated that the defenders don't even realize they're defenders. They think they're just being nice. On the surveillance screen, baby Emma had woken up and was making soft cooing sounds. Mr. Whiskers immediately perked up and padded into the nursery, where he settled down near the crib with a contented purr. Look at that response time, Grunk observed. Immediate tactical repositioning based on asset status changes. Sir, Pip said, his voice barely above a whisper. What if there are more of them? Vex and Grunk turned to stare at their scout. More cats? Grunk asked. More bonded pairs, Pip clarified, his antenna now twitching so fast they were creating a small breeze. I mean, if humans can do this with cats, what else have they domesticated? What if every household has one of these biological weapons systems? The three aliens sat in stunned silence as the implications of this possibility sank in. Computer, Vex said finally, search Earth databases for common household pets. The ship's AI cheerfully complied, and within seconds the main screen was filled with images that would haunt the aliens' dreams for cycles to come. Dogs of every size and temperament, from tiny chihuahuas to massive Great Danes. Birds that could mimic human speech, reptiles that tolerated handling, fish that responded to their owner's presence. Sweet cosmic void, Grunt breathed. They've got an entire army. And look at this, the computer announced helpfully, displaying statistics about pet ownership. Approximately 67% of Earth households maintain at least one domesticated animal companion. Pip made a sound that was somewhere between a whimper and a mechanical failure. 2/3 of their population, Vex said slowly, has access to biologically integrated defense systems. Sir, Grunk said, consulting yet another data tablet. There's more. According to their cultural databases, humans also form these emotional bonds with what they call wildlife. They have entire organizations dedicated to protecting and preserving non-domesticated species. You mean they've recruited the entire planet? It appears so, sir. And the most disturbing part is that they seem to do it automatically. They encounter a species, they study its behavioral patterns, they determine its needs, and then they modify their own behavior to accommodate it. It's like they're running some kind of continuous diplomatic program with every living thing on their planet. Vex slumped into his command chair, finally understanding the scope of what they were facing. Gentlemen, he said quietly, we're not looking at a military force. We're looking at a species that has accidentally created the most effective planetary defense system in the galaxy by being nice to things. Sir, Pip asked, his voice barely audible, what do we do? Vex looked at his crew, then at the surveillance display where Mr. Whiskers was gently headbutting baby Emma's tiny fist while purring, loud enough to be heard through their advanced listening equipment. We run, he said simply. We run very, very fast, and we never speak of this place again. But even as he said it, Vex knew it was too late. They had seen too much, learned too much, understood too much about the terrifying power of a species that could turn love into the most effective weapon in the universe. The screen below, completely oblivious to the cosmic significance of his actions, Mr. Whiskers settled down for a nap, secure in the knowledge that his family was safe, his territory was defended, and all was right with his particular corner of the world. Sometimes the most effective defenses are the ones that don't know their defenses at all. Commander Vex's official report to the Galactic Conquest Committee would later become required reading at military academies across 17 star systems, though not for the reasons he had originally intended. Filed under Planetary Assessment, Sol 3, and stamped with the highest security classification available, the document began with what would become the most famous opening line in xenostrategic studies. To whom it may concern, do not, under any circumstances, attempt to invade Earth. This is not a suggestion, this is a desperate plea from someone who has seen things that cannot be unseen. The inevitable conquest was currently traveling at maximum warp speed away from Earth's solar system, its crew having concluded that whatever they had witnessed was so far beyond their understanding of conventional warfare that retreat was not just advisable, it was a moral imperative. Status report, Vex called from his command chair, though his voice carried none of its former confidence. We have achieved minimum safe distance from the Sol system, sir, Pip reported, his antenna finally showing signs of calming down to merely frantic instead of completely hysterical. All stealth systems engaged. No signs of pursuit. Pursuit? Grunk looked up from his endless documentation. Sir, do you really think they detected us? Vex stared at the view screen where Earth was now just a distant blue dot among the stars. Grunk, we spent 3 days observing what we thought was a single tactical unit. If that was just one household, and if 67% of households have similar capabilities, he trailed off, apparently unable to complete the mathematical horror of that calculation. Sir, Pip said carefully, maybe we should focus on the report. The committee is going to want details. Details, Vex repeated, as if the word itself was somehow painful. How exactly does one explain to the Galactic Conquest Committee that we have discovered a planet defended by the power of friendship? We could start with the tactical assessment, Grunk suggested helpfully. Fine. Vex activated his recording device and began dictating in the kind of flat, professional tone usually reserved for discussing tax codes or funeral arrangements. Planetary Defense Assessment, Sol 3. Designation Earth. Primary defensive capabilities. Complete integration of indigenous predatory species through advanced psychological bonding protocols. Observed effectiveness, 100% success rate in perimeter defense operations. He paused, staring at nothing in particular. Secondary capabilities. Planet-wide recruitment of all biological assets through systematic application of what can only be described as tactical niceness. Threat level assessment. Another pause. Threat level assessment. Run. Just run. Sir, Pip interjected gently. The committee is going to want more specific technical data. Technical data? Vex laughed, and it was not a sound that suggested good mental health. Pip, how do you write a technical manual for species that have weaponized empathy? How do you defend against opponents whose primary tactical advantage is that they genuinely care about each other? On one of Grunk's data tablets, a saved image showed Mr. Whiskers curled up next to baby Emma's crib, both of them fast asleep in the morning sunlight. It was, by any objective measure, one of the most peaceful scenes ever recorded. It was also, according to their analysis, one of the most tactically brilliant defensive deployments in galactic military history. The intelligence reports alone will give the committee nightmares, Vex continued. A species that can convince apex predators to voluntarily guard their most vulnerable population centers. A civilization that has achieved perfect loyalty from their biological weapons through the simple expedient of being nice to them. Sir, Grunk said quietly, there's something else. While reviewing the cultural databases, I discovered that they have something called animal rescue organizations. What now? Apparently, when they encounter members of other species that are injured or displaced, they have systematic protocols for providing medical care, rehabilitation, and integration into human society. The silence that followed was so complete that the ship's environmental system seemed loud by comparison. They might rescue them, Pip said slowly. And then provide medical treatment, Grunk confirmed. And then adopt them into their families, Vex finished, his voice filled with the kind of awe usually reserved for witnessing supernovas. Sir, Pitt whispered, what kind of species builds an entire civilization based on helping other species? The kind of species, Vex replied, that we never, ever want to meet in actual combat. He turned back to his recording device with the air of someone preparing to deliver very bad news to very important people. Additional note for the committee. Earth's defensive capabilities extend beyond simple biological weapons integration. Evidence suggests that humans possess some form of natural diplomatic immunity that allows them to establish peaceful relations with virtually any species they encounter. Tactical recommendation: immediate reclassification of Sol 3 as an unassailable fortress world. Sir, Grunk said, consulting his notes one final time, should we mention the discovery about their therapy animals? Therapy animals. Apparently they train some of their bonded companions specifically to provide emotional support to humans experiencing psychological distress. They've weaponized comfort itself. Vex stared at his analyst with the expression of someone who had just been told that gravity was actually optional and had been working on the honor system this whole time. Final entry, he said to the recording device. Personal note to future expedition planners. The species designation, human, should be amended to include a warning that they are apparently capable of turning any form of positive interaction into a strategic advantage. They have created a planetary defense network powered entirely by mutual affection, and it is the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. He paused at the recording and looked around at his crew. Gentlemen, I want it clearly understood that this mission never happened. We never found Earth. We never observed their defensive capabilities, and we most certainly never witnessed a cat defend a human infant with the tactical precision of a trained military operative. Understood, sir, Pip and Grunk replied in unison. Good. And if anyone asks why we're recommending that the entire Sol system be marked as a permanent no-fly zone, we tell them it's because of dangerous gravitational anomalies. What about the real reason, sir? Pip asked. Vex looked back at the view screen, where Earth had now disappeared entirely among the distant stars. The real reason, Pip, is that somewhere on that planet a small orange cat is probably settling down for his afternoon nap, completely unaware that he has just saved his entire world from invasion by being exactly what cats have always been, absolutely devoted to the people they love. He stood up from his command chair with the careful movements of someone who was still processing everything he had witnessed. And if that's not the most effective defense system in the galaxy, I don't know what is. 3 months later, the Galactic Conquest Committee's official database was updated with a new entry. Sol 3, Earth Unborn. Classification, Unassailable Weapons Integration. Do not approach. Seriously. We mean it. The entry was filed under planets that are definitely not worth the trouble, a category that had been created specifically for Earth and had remained remarkably unpopulated ever since. Meanwhile, completely oblivious to his status as the galaxy's most feared defensive asset, Mr. Whiskers continued his daily routine of napping, eating, protecting baby Emma, and occasionally staring at the sky, with the kind of intense focus that made passing alien reconnaissance teams decide they really needed to be somewhere else. After all, when your planetary defense system is powered by love, even a single cat can be a weapon of mass deterrence. And the best part? He didn't even know he was doing it.